Hello, John Anderson here, your favorite sports consultant. In college athletics, schools are split into conferences, where they play that smaller group of schools regularly throughout the year, and then if they are good enough to make it to the whole country championship tournament at the end of the year, that's when they would play other teams from across the country. Districts are made mainly just because there's so many schools that are participating in athletics programs that it doesn't make logistical sense to have them all just play each other free-for-all. So usually conferences will have between, say, 8 and 15 schools, depending on how many schools have that sport. XC, I'm assuming the conferences are a little bit smaller than in real-life sports, and there's also probably not nearly as many. In the real world, there are dozens of conferences because there are hundreds of schools with sports teams. But for XC, there's still probably a good amount. The way districts are split up is mainly due to location. So USC is in California, Edgar Allen and Palmetto State are on the East Coast. That's why those schools are not in the same district/conference. Like USC is not going to be able to regularly play Palmetto State because they're 3,000 miles away from each other. In the tournament at the end of the year, maybe they can play if they both qualify, but during regular season games where they are also doing schooling ostensibly, it doesn't make practical sense to have them face off. There are times when districts or conferences get reshuffled and switched around. In the real world, especially the last 10 years or so, this has been happening a lot more. It's almost always due to money and television. That's why this is honestly a pretty realistic part of All for the Game. Edgar Allen wants to switch conferences because they want to continue the rivalry with Kevin, and they're worried that Palmetto State might not make it to the tournament because they're not seen as a very strong team, so they want to be able to try to beat them up while they still have the chance, because they're sadistic. Real world, obviously, it's never that personal, but making sure that games are still seen as competitive and like box office draws is definitely something that people consider, because college athletics is a business, make no mistake. That's why one of the stipulations for why, I think it's said in the book, Edgar Allen is able to do this because they're the only XC team in West Virginia, so then they wouldn't be taking away competition from other teams in West Virginia by moving. Let me explain what that means. In one of the conferences in real-life sports, it's called the Big 12. That's where Kansas is in, for example. At one point, there were 4 different teams in Texas that were all in the Big 12 conference. There was Texas, Texas Tech, Texas A&M, and Baylor. Texas is a big school, but even then, having 4 different teams from the same state competing against each other regularly actually hurt revenue because it didn't allow any of them to fully blossom into like being the powerhouse team. They were too competitive towards each other, but not towards the other teams, and so none of them really ever took off as much. Texas was probably the biggest, but then that made it harder for any of the other schools to gain traction. So in the last 10 years or so, I think 3 of those teams have left the Big 12 conference to join other conferences so that they could have a bit more room for themselves. In Edgar Allen's case, it's not like they're moving to Palmetto State's district where there's going to be more West Virginian teams. It's just them. So that's why it's not going to hurt the revenue. Also, having them compete against Palmetto State and especially Kevin would increase revenue for both of them, honestly, because everybody wants to see this rivalry. This isn't ever mentioned in the book. I think one of the other reasons is that, from what we've gathered, Edgar Allen dominates XC like nobody else, which means they especially dominate their conference like nobody else. I would imagine they haven't had any serious competition in their district for years. This switch would probably shake up that monotony just because it would be something new. And so it would help reinstate their dominance, that's their plan at least, if they were able to then move to a different conference and start conquering them instead. It would help the other schools in the old district that Edgar Allen was at because they'd be able to gain some more power of their own because they wouldn't just be getting beat up by Edgar Allen year after year after year. So this does really benefit everybody except obviously Palmetto State because they are going to take this as a personal attack, which it is. Yeah, so this is honestly kind of realistic. I don't have any objections to this. The The way it goes down is very questionable, but because Edgar Allan also does such a good job of hiding what went down between them and Kevin and how they were actually responsible for his injury, I don't think it's out of the question for it to get approved and have it move forward. Like, all of the shadiness about Edgar Allan hasn't really come to light at this point, so there wouldn't be that big of an outcry. It would probably just cause a lot of intrigue and rustle up publicity, which is exactly what every school wants if it's good publicity in both the real world and the story. Back to you.